right. Hey, everyone out there. Welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we are going to be looking at conversion copywriting. And we've got two really interesting sources to kind of pick apart.
Yeah.
We've got a conversion copywriting crash course v2.0. And then we also have a copy of Crash Masterclass. And this one's in Arabic ELTA content marketing.
Nice.
So two different kind of perspectives on this whole idea of content marketing and how to do it. And our goal is to pull out some of the big ideas that we found. You know, the stuff that makes you kind of go, oh, yeah, that's a good point. So that you can use that to improve your own writing skills and your own content marketing and not just write beautiful prose. You know?
Exactly.
Not just write something that sounds good, but also gets people to do stuff.
Yeah, I think that's like the big shift that we see a lot is people think, I can write some cute captions or, some funny posts on social media, and that's content marketing.
Right.
But it's really about looking at how it all kind of fits into the bigger picture of the business and how your content can be used to achieve those goals.
Yeah, and the conversion copywriting crash course v2.0, it's pretty explicit about that, actually.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things it talks about is that your mindset is really like the most valuable thing going into this.
Yeah.
And that conversion copywriting is not just about writing cute captions.
Yeah.
It's like they even have this whole anecdote in there about some early attempts
Yeah.
doing this kind of like creative, clever caption thing and how it really didn't get any results and how it really took this shift in thinking to like, we need to sell stuff now, not just impress people.
Right. Like, stop trying to be cute, right? Like,
Right.
What is the actual business objective?
Right. And where do you fit in as the copywriter?
Yeah.
In this kind of bigger business cycle where you've got these other marketers who are focusing on growth and all that and how your content marketing and your copywriting fits in as part of that and provides value to the marketplace with quality commercial content.
Right. And I think one of the biggest things to kind of grasp early on is that conversion copywriting, it's not something that you just sit down and just write from your head.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about being creative and coming up with, fancy words. It's really a series of like what they call sales items that are assembled in a specific order.
Oh, interesting.
And the sequence is like designed to lead the potential customer towards a desired action.
Okay.
So it's really about discovering like the valid sales items and then creating these communication messages that make it like easy for them to consume and interact with.
So for our listener, what are those starting points?
So, so they talk about really understanding what are the big goals of the business, what are they trying to achieve, and what are the problems or the challenges that are preventing them from achieving those goals.
Interesting. So it's not just like, gut feeling. It's actually
Exactly.
very numerically driven.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about the numbers, being comfortable with key performance indicators.
Well, the KPIs.
Yes. Exactly. Understanding those KPIs, understanding metrics,
Right.
and like really seeing how they all fit together is really important.
Right. So you have to understand kind of the business side of it, not just the like
Exactly.
creative writing side of it.
Yeah, and they're very explicit about that. They say, like, you need to think like a strategist as a conversion copywriter, not just a, creative writer.
Yeah, and that leads us perfectly to what they call the TTPM framework,
Yes.
which they say is essential for any brand strategist who's involved with CRO.
Yeah, conversion rate optimization.
Conversion rate optimization, yeah. So what is TTPM?
Yeah.
Well, it stands for timing, targeting, placement, and messaging.
Okay.
So timing is all about showing the right content at the right moment. Makes sense.
Right, yeah, like don't try to sell winter coats in July.
Right,
That's
exactly.
going to work.
Yeah, so they even used this really interesting example. They said, imagine you're like on IKEA's website looking for a coffee table, and all of a sudden you see an ad pop up for like a laptop table. And they're like, technically, like that could convert, but it's probably not because it's not what you're looking for at that moment.
Yeah.
So timing really matters. And they introduced this idea of conversion rate.
Yeah.
So if 100 people see your content and 10 of them click, then you've got like a 10% conversion rate.
Right. Yeah.
Same with products, right?
Yeah.
10 people look at a product page and one person adds to cart.
Yep.
That's a 10% conversion rate. So, CRO is all about trying to improve those percentages.
Yeah.
And conversion copywriting is really kind of a best practice within that.
And they even have another really good example where they talk about someone's searching online for like the cheapest hosting.
Okay.
And they see like two different ads. One ad says like, lowest price hosting.
Right.
And the other ad says, top 10 hosting providers of 2024.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, someone who's searching for cheapest is probably prioritizing the price over anything else, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right.
So the first ad is going to resonate with them much more because it's like, yeah, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I want the cheapest option.
Okay. So that was timing. Then the second T in TTPM is targeting.
Yes. And that's all about reaching the right person with your message.
Makes sense.
So someone who actually has a need for what you're offering or
Wow.
or a willingness to, to buy it.
Like, you don't want to be selling
Yeah.
dog food to someone who doesn't have a dog.
Right. Exactly. So their example is, if you're offering a copywriting course, you're going to want to target people who are interested in learning copywriting.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. All right. And then the P, placement.
Placement, yes. And that is all about showing the ad or your content where your target audience is actively present.
Yeah.
So if you're, trying to reach programmers, LinkedIn might be a good place.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to sell trendy clothes to teenagers, you're probably going to have more luck on TikTok or Instagram. Makes sense. And then the M, messaging. Okay.
And this is all about delivering a message that resonates with the customer's current needs and desires.
Oh, yeah.
So if someone's looking for a gym membership, highlighting a special offer might be effective. But if someone's a teenager struggling with acne, focusing on how quickly your skincare product can help is probably going to grab their attention more.
Okay. So it's like really thinking about what does that person need at that moment.
Exactly.
So the TTPM framework is really all about getting the right message to the right person in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. It's like a recipe for success.
Yeah.
And when you get all of those things working together, you massively increase the probability of someone taking the action that you want them to take.
Okay, cool. So then they go into this question of who will pay the money.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not always obvious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and they highlight this difference between the consumer
Right.
and the payer.
Yeah.
So, the consumer might be the kid who's eating the cereal, but the payer is the parent who's actually buying it.
Exactly. And your messaging needs to take that into account.
Right. Yeah.
You need to speak to the motivations of whoever is holding the wallet.
Yeah, and they acknowledge that, especially today, it can be really hard to fully understand who your potential customer is.
Right. Yeah. Especially with, these newer generations like Gen Z and Alpha.
Right.
Things are changing so quickly.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up.
It's like by the time you figure it out, it's changed already.
It's already outdated.
Yeah. So the advice there is don't get bogged down trying to create this perfect, all-encompassing buyer persona right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Start with basic demographics like age and location to get a general idea. And then, over time, you keep refining that understanding.
Exactly. It's an iterative process.
Yeah. And they caution against just blindly copying what other companies have done in the past.
Yeah.
Because their audience and their situation might be completely different.
Exactly, yeah. You need to do your own research.
Yeah. Okay, so to help you really get a handle on the nuts and bolts of your product or your service,
Right.
the Conversion Copywriting Crash Course V2.0 introduces something called a product worksheet.
Okay.
And they say the purpose of this is to really get down to the nitty-gritty, all the details of what you're offering.
Okay.
Not just the features, but also what are the advantages that those features bring?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the actual benefits for the customer?
Right.
And then even beyond that, what are the motivations that drive people to buy?
Interesting.
So they say that they actually have a template
Oh, nice.
for this that you can ask for.
Mm.
But what they suggest is using AI, using a very specific prompts that they provide
Oh, interesting.
to analyze your product using what they call the FAB&M framework.
What's that?
Features, advantages, benefits, and motivations.
Okay.
But to do it in Egyptian colloquial Arabic.
Oh, interesting.
Because they think that using this different cultural lens can sometimes reveal really strong selling points
Yeah, that's fascinating.
that you might not have seen
Yeah.
otherwise. Okay, so then they get into ideal buyer personas.
Right.
And, we've talked about this before on the show. There are these, fictional representations of your ideal customer.
Right.
But they make this really important distinction.
Hmm.
Instead of just creating one for your entire brand,
Oh,
they say create them for each individual product or service that you offer.
I see.
They call these target groups.
Hmm.
So they have this two-part process for really getting to know your target groups.
Okay.
Part one is all about how to understand them.
Hmm.
And they say the key here is to look at their conversations.
Okay.
So look at what they're saying in online chats.
Hmm.
Listen to recordings of customer support calls.
Oh.
Read what they're saying in face-to-face meetings if you can, right?
Yeah.
Scroll through comments and replies on social media.
Sure.
They say, really listen, read carefully, and focus on every word that they use.
So it's not just about like the surface level stuff. It's really about
Yeah.
understanding like the nuances of what they're saying.
Exactly. And then part 2 of the process is like what you need to understand about these target groups.
Hmm.
And this goes beyond just the basic demographics.
Okay.
Like you need to understand their fears.
Okay.
What keeps them up at night?
Yeah.
What are the daily pain points that cause them frustration?
Mm.
What are their priorities in life? What are their desires, right? Broken down into the things they absolutely need, the things that would complement their life, and then those like true luxuries.
I see. I see. So it's like getting a full picture
Yeah.
of their lives and their aspirations.
And they emphasize, like, figure out who the real decision maker is too. It might not be the person who's going to use the product, right?
Right. Like in the B2B world, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
You might be talking to someone who's making a recommendation, but ultimately the decision rests with someone else,
Right.
higher up in the organization.
Yeah, and understand what could make them decide to buy right now.
Right.
What's the thing that would push them over the edge?
Yeah. What's the trigger?
Yeah. And also, what's preventing them from taking that action?
Right. Yeah. What are the barriers?
What are the barriers? Is it something about your brand? Is it something about your product? Is it something about the market? Or is it something about them and their own,
Right. Yeah.
personal circumstances?
Maybe they just can't afford it right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have this little pro hack that they share
Oh.
for when you're still getting to know your audience.
Yeah.
They say create what's called amplifying content.
Okay.
And this is content that's designed to get people talking and asking questions. So you can then directly ask them about all those points we just talked about, right?
So it's like using content to elicit information from your audience.
Yeah, exactly. So then they touch on this idea of customer class.
Oh, yeah. The ABC kind of thing.
Yeah, like ABC. They're like, this is based on income and social status and education.
Right. Yeah.
But they say that these lines have really blurred.
Yeah, especially with things like buy now, pay later.
Right.
People can access products and services that maybe they wouldn't have been able to afford before.
Right, exactly. So their advice is to like really focus on understanding and targeting a specific class when you're creating your content.
Okay.
And make sure that it truly resonates with them and not necessarily with everyone else.
Yeah. So it's about being really specific and tailored in your approach.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the reaching them part of this, which is another way of saying targeting, right?
Okay.
So here they make this really interesting distinction between content targeting and system targeting. So content targeting is basically creating content that by its very nature will attract people who are interested in it.
Yeah.
And be ignored by those who aren't. So they give these examples of like opening lines like, tired of hair loss,
Right.
looking for an affordable 5-star Umrah trip, or do you suffer from frequent headaches?
Yeah.
So someone who doesn't have a problem with hair loss
Exactly.
is just going to scroll past that.
Yeah, it's self-selecting in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
The content itself is doing the targeting.
Right. And then like system targeting is when you take that kind of content
Right.
and you use paid advertising to show it to a wider group of people that the advertising platforms algorithms think might be interested based on like,
Their demographic.
their interests and their kind of online behavior.
Right. So you're using the power of the platform to reach a wider audience.
Yeah, exactly. So then they go into this really crucial part, persuading them. Right. And they acknowledge like, getting someone to actually spend money it's a big ask.
Yeah, a big hurdle. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where they introduce the idea of persuasion cards.
Oh, okay.
Which are like different persuasive elements that you can kind of use in your copy. And they illustrate this with some examples from real successful ads.
Oh, cool.
And we actually see the ads.
Oh, nice.
They're for rear rack pillows.
Okay.
And then they break down like, okay, here are the persuasion cards they used, making specific claims about the product.
Yeah.
Hitting certain triggers like pain points, highlighting the gains for the customer.
Yeah.
addressing logistics, like shipping,
Okay.
offering a fear-free promise, like a money-back guarantee,
Yeah.
and then creating a sense of urgency.
Right.
So, we're going to go through a few of these key persuasion cards. So claims are basically the features of your product.
Yeah.
Any awards that you've won,
Yeah.
your credentials, or any promises that you're making about your products.
Mm.
Like this is all tied back to that product worksheet that we talked about earlier,
Yes. Yeah.
where you really nail down like, what is your product?
Yeah.
And what does it do?
Okay.
So then you have what's called triggers.
Okay.
And these are like the main things that drive people to make a purchase,
Right.
right? So their pain points,
Mm.
their interests,
Yeah.
even like their basic instincts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say they're going to go into more detail about content direction and concept and insights
Right.
later on because it's closely related to like,
Yeah.
understanding and using these triggers effectively.
Okay.
Okay, so before we get there, they briefly clarify the difference between creative copy and conversion copy. So, creator copy, which you often see with these big brand awareness campaigns,
Yeah.
is all about like the big idea
Yeah.
and creating long-term impact.
Right.
It doesn't usually ask for immediate action.
Yeah.
It could be funny, dramatic, even sad, right?
Yeah.
It's all about like making an impression.
Impression. Yeah.
Whereas conversion copy has one main goal,
Okay.
which is instant action from the potential customer.
Okay.
Now, that action isn't always buying something right then and there, right?
Right.
It could be donating to a cause, clicking the notification, creating an account, adding something to their shopping cart.
Okay.
So any step along the way in what we call the conversion funnel.
Right. It's about moving them
Yeah.
closer to that ultimate goal.
And they point out that each stage of that conversion funnel needs its own kind of copy
Right.
that speaks to where that customer is at in their thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You need to meet them where they are
Yeah.
and address their specific concerns at each stage.
Yeah, and they acknowledge that like fully understanding all these little nuances
Yeah.
is like an ongoing process,
Yeah.
which is why businesses are constantly working on like conversion rate optimization,
Right.
tweaking and improving things.
It's a continuous process
Yeah.
of testing and refining.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So this leads into this idea of campaigns and conversion copywriting.
Okay.
And they're like, while they might have similar names to these big, splashy, creative campaigns that we see, the way that they're executed can be quite different. And they say, really importantly, they always start with insights. So insights are like the underlying psychological and behavioral truths that your copy is built upon.
Okay.
And they come from really understanding your audience and how they behave.
So it's not just about like what they say, but it's about what motivates them.
Yeah, and they give this really great formula.
Okay.
Need plus pain equals insight.
I like that.
So think about an insight as like this unspoken truth that kind of guides people's everyday decisions. And it has to be relevant to what's happening right now and where they are. Okay, so they give this real-world example to show us how to actually find these insights. It's with Metadoc, which is a healthcare app.
Okay.
And what it does is it offers online doctor consultations, or they call teleconsultation.
Oh, interesting.
So they had two main goals for this campaign.
Okay.
One was to let their existing users know about this new service and get them to try it.
Okay.
And the second was to bring in new users who had never used the app before
Yeah.
or even the teleconsultation service.
Oh, that makes sense.
So the example focuses on that second goal, right?
Yeah.
Getting new customers who are trying teleconsultation for the first time.
Okay.
And they say this falls into the acquisition stage of their growth funnel. So the key insight that they identified for this campaign was people usually go straight to Google when they feel sick or have symptoms.
Yeah, that's so true.
Even though Google is just a search engine, it's not a doctor.
Right. It's not going to give you a diagnosis
Right.
or prescribe medication.
So this is like one of those unstated truths, right? It's
Yeah.
like so many people just automatically do
Or
it.
they just go to Google and type in their symptoms.
Right.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that myself.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
So then building on that insight,
Okay.
the next step was to create the core message for this campaign, which was Google is not a doctor. Don't rely on search engines for medical advice.
Okay, so they're directly addressing
Yeah.
that behavior
Yeah, exactly.
and trying to change it.
And they say that they would continue to develop what's called the key message
Hmm.
which would expand on this core idea
Okay.
and try to get people to take action,
Yeah.
which would be like, use the Metadoc app instead.
Gotcha. So that's a really interesting example of how insights can drive the
Yeah.
entire messaging strategy for a campaign.
Exactly.
Very cool.
Okay, so we also have this copy of Crash Masterclass VL Content Marketing.
Yeah.
And this was described as more of like an advanced step-by-step guide. That covers everything from planning your content strategy
Mm-hmm.
all the way to publishing
Mm.
and then analyzing how it performs.
Right. So it's like the full life cycle of content marketing
Yeah.
from start to finish.
Yeah, and the goal here is to like really master content marketing in a practical way.
Okay, cool.
So they start by introducing this, what they call the KSA formula for learning any skill.
KSA.
Knowledge plus skills plus attitude equals expertise.
Oh, I like that.
So then they make sure to clarify the difference between content, just general content, which is any message that you put out to an audience,
Right.
and then content marketing,
Hmm.
which is using content strategically for marketing purposes.
So it's content with a specific purpose
Yeah.
to achieve business goals.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal being to build trust that leads to profits.
Hmm.
So they present this idea of like the content marketing game is almost like a puzzle with 4 key pieces.
Yeah.
You have your content itself, the context in which you're presenting it, the promotion of that content, and then the engagement
Okay.
that you have with your audience.
Gotcha. So all of these things need to work together
Yeah.
for your content marketing to be effective.
Exactly. So then they define a content framework
Yeah, okay.
as a system for producing content that serves the business and provides value to the customer.
Hmm.
And they break this framework down into 3 main stages: before writing, during writing, and after writing.
Okay.
So before writing involves all that analysis and planning
Yeah, the pre-production phase.
and goal setting, yeah.
Yeah.
During writing is the actual creation and production of the content.
Okay.
And then after writing focuses on promoting the content, analyzing how it performed, and measuring impact.
Right. So it's like the full life cycle
Yeah.
of a piece of content.
And within this content marketing framework,
Okay.
there's several key components, and they start right at the beginning with the client brief.
Okay. The client brief.
Yeah. And they really stress the importance of having a strong client brief.
Hmm.
And they outline all the essential information that should be in there.
Okay.
Things like the client's name,
Yeah.
their business challenges,
Mhm.
details about their product or service, their weaknesses, who their target audience is,
Okay.
who their competitors are,
Yeah.
what the campaign is trying to achieve,
Right.
and their overall brand positioning.
Mm.
So this brief is really like a roadmap for all of your content efforts.
It sets the stage for everything
Yeah.
that follows.
Exactly. So then the framework moves into analyzing the product or service itself. And they talk about breaking it down into its features,
Hmm.
the advantages that those features offer, and the benefits for the customer.
Okay.
And they even mention using what's called the job to be done matrix,
Oh, okay.
which helps you think about what is the fundamental job that the customer is hiring your product to do,
Hmm.
both from a practical and an emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
So then the core message
Right.
is defined as how your product helps your ideal customer overcome their problems,
Right.
reach their goals, and lead a better life.
Okay.
So they suggest gathering info for this analysis from
Yep.
all sorts of places, like your technical team, your sales team, your competitors, any data that you have on your audience.
Right. So it's about getting a holistic view of the product and
Yeah.
its place in the market.
Yeah. And they also give a concise explanation of how to write a core message
Hmm.
that's not only convincing, but also moves people to action.
Okay.
And then from there, they move on to step 3,
Okay.
which is defining your target audience using what's known as the STP strategy,
What's CP?
segmentation, targeting, and positioning.
Gotcha.
And they emphasize how important it is to know who you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
And they talk about 2 main ways to approach this,
Okay.
starting with a market need and then developing a product,
Okay.
or starting with a product and then finding the right market for it. So they break down segmentation, which is basically about dividing a large market into smaller,
Yeah.
more manageable groups
Yeah.
based on shared characteristics.
Hmm.
So for B2C, they outline 4 main ways to segment.
Oh.
You've got demographics, age, gender, income,
Hmm.
geographics, their location,
Okay.
psychographics, which is their lifestyle, values, attitudes,
Right.
and then behavioral, like how do they act, what do they buy, how often.
Okay. Does